The events kicks off with a story about this wild power sleeping beneath the planet called astral power, told by two characters. This astral power is too intense for humans, so anyone who has it is seen as a witch or mage, leading to a lot of fear and oppression in the Empire. The Empire, a kind of paradise, is right next to the home of the innocent witches, known as the Nebulous Sovereignty. The twist of fate that links these two nations is a never-ending cycle of war. The two characters decide they'll put an end to the fighting and create a world where no one gets persecuted. So, the crusade that would change everything kicks off. The next scene flashes back to an incident in the Empire from a year ago. A saint disciple named Iska breaks a witch out of jail, leaving her shocked. He hands her some cash and snacks to get her through for a bit. Fast forward a year and Iska is busted out of prison by the 8 great apostles. One of them tells him he was the youngest ever to be called a saint disciple, but he got demoted a year ago and locked up for freeing that witch. They point out that it was a huge crime since their nation has been at war with witches for a century, but he now has a chance to fix things. He's given the mission to take down the super powerful Ice Calamity Witch, who's a direct descendant of the Grand Witch Nebulous. The apostle warns him that the Grand Witch caused a massive disaster for their empire, and her purebred descendants have crazy astral powers. Iska gears up for his mission and requests 3 team members to join him. A young guy named Jin swings by a restaurant to see a waitress named Neen. He fills her in on Iska's release, mentioning they're heading out on a mission with him at midnight. Nani, a bit confused by the news, starts asking questions that don't really connect. Meanwhile, Iska is at their meetup spot, staring at the stars and realizing it's been a whole year since he last saw this view. Jin strolls over, and Iska thanks him for helping to reach out to the others, but Jin brushes it off, saying he's used to Iska's last-minute plans. Then Nene zooms in, hugs Iska tight, and congratulates him on his release. As she rushes over to meet the captain, she trips. The captain is super pumped to have the team named Special Defense for Humanity, 3rd Division, Unit N7 back together after a year. Nene asks what their mission is, and Jin fills them in. Iska tells the captain that his release is all about this mission. She responds that the apostles set him up since the Ice Calamity Witch is considered the strongest astral mage after she broke through the northern front line in Yubel and walked away without a scratch. Jin agrees, but adds that the captain doesn't know how strong Iska really is. Nani backs him up, explaining that Iska got locked up right after becoming a saint disciple, so their guards will be down. The captain asks if he's really up for the mission, and Iska confirms, saying it's his shot to stop the endless war between the Empire and Nebulous Sovereignty. Iska and the captain are chilling in front of a massive weapon reactor. She confirms it's brand new, but only a few troops are hanging around. Nene jumps in all excited and interrupts them. She mentions the commanding officer told her the reactor's still a work in progress because they've been hit hard by astral mage attacks lately. Their crew is busy holding down the front instead of finishing the reactor. Nene goes on about how the reactor's looking from her engineering point of view. Then Jin strolls in and cuts her off, explaining that this whole mess has been a nasty cycle for 100 years. Every time the Empire builds a reactor, the Sovereignty attacks to wreck it, forcing the Emperor to churn out more weapons. He adds that the emotional stakes have gotten way out of hand, and logic isn't gonna fix things unless someone steps in and puts a stop to it, no matter the hate they might get. They trek through the woods, when suddenly the car gets ambushed by astral mages. Jin shouts for everyone to jump down, and the car flips over. Jin realizes they've got a powerful astral mage nearby, who broke through their defenses. Nene gets a text saying the Nelka Force Communications team needs backup. Jin stresses they can't waste time because they've got a sneak attack planned. Out of nowhere, some astral mages shoot flame attacks at Jin, but Iska jumps in to save him, slicing through the flames, shocking the mages. Jin fires back, but they hold his bullets in place, identifying their magic as wing astral power. More mages pop up from underground, and Jin figures out they're hiding below, meaning there's a top-tier astral mage pulling the strings. Their captions wonder why they're so chill about this crazy situation, and Jin explains they saw it coming. He asks Iska if he can take them all down, but Iska says it'll be rough until he gets his instincts back. He asks Nene for help. Nene sets off her anti-astral power flares, causing a big explosion. Iska slices through all their attacks, making one mage doubt his strength, while Jin takes down his targets. Suddenly, the ground shakes, and a golem emerges. A young lady in a maid outfit praises them for being a regular squad, but they finished off the unit before she showed up. She tells the golem to attack, but Iska steps in to defend, telling the captain to take Jin and Nene and get out while he handles this. Iska cuts through the golem's strikes, and the lady asks if he's a saint's disciple. Iska replies he doesn't see why he should answer unless she tells him where the Ice Calamity Witch is, but she won't say. They start fighting, and Iska manages to subdue her. Just then, the Ice Calamity Witch arrives and freezes everything. She checks in on Rin and thanks the lady for stalling him. Iska realizes she froze the reactor. That was her plan all along. He tells her he's here to take her in. She asks if he even knows who he's talking to, and warns him to give up if he doesn't want to feel a frostbite worse than death. They introduce themselves, and then the witch attacks him. They go at it, with Iska breaking through her defenses. He channels astral power to wake his astral swords, and Alice recoils, surprising Rin. She tells Iska to pull back, but he refuses and tells her to get out of there. The Ice Witch, Alice, declares she won't back down until she topples the empire and unites the world. While she keeps talking, she slips on the mountain and almost falls, but Iska rushes in to catch her. He checks if she's alright, and she says she is as they lock eyes. Alice snaps back to reality and jumps out of his grip when they hear his team calling him. Alice tells Rin to retreat, and a big bird swoops in. Before leaving, she tells Iska he won't catch her next time. The captain and Nene run up to hug him, asking if he's good, while Jin confirms the rumors about Alice being a super astral mage are legit. He adds that the ice made it to their rendezvous on the front lines. Later, Alice relaxes in a tub, thinking about her encounter with Iska. She jumps up while Rin dresses her and decides to distract herself. She suggests a trip to the opera house. At the opera, Alice gets emotional over the story, soaking her handkerchief. A stranger offers her another one, and she thanks him. After the show, she offers to pay the guy back, but he insists it's just a cheap handkerchief. As the theater lights come up, Alice realizes the stranger is Iska. They both stare at each other in shock. The episode kicks off with Iska's perspective on what went down at the theater. He's lying in bed, wide awake, his mind swirling with thoughts of Alice. He tells his captain he can't sleep, and she suggests a change of scenery since she thinks he's been messed up mentally by the whole experience. She invites him over to her place, where she has a collection of stuffed animals. She tells him that nothing good will come from being stuck indoors, so he needs to get out. She hands him a ticket for an opera show happening the next day in the neutral city and encourages him to go. The next day, Nene drives him to the show. On the way, Iska dreams about their master giving him the astral swords. The master tells him to never let go of those swords because they're the key to fixing the world. Nene wakes him up to say they've arrived at the neutral city, and he shares his dream with her. He explains it's been a while since he dreamt about the master, and this one involves some intense training with Jin. At the theater, Iska sits behind a lady who starts crying during the show, and he struggles to focus because she's so emotional. He listens in on her conversations and offers her his handkerchief. After the show, she tries to pay him back for it, but when the lights come on, he realizes the lady is Alice. She angrily asks if he followed her to the show and tries to attack him, but Rin steps in and calms her down, saying conflicts are a no-go in the neutral city. Alice agrees it would be a disaster if she attacked him, but she keeps throwing insults his way. Rin tells her to tone it down, and Alice decides to leave, giving Iska a polite bow out of habit. Outside the theater, Alice is upset about running into Iska. She wonders if he's been following them, and Rin reassures her that he didn't leave the hall until they did. She suggests they check out a famous pasta place to eat. When they get to the restaurant, the waitress tells them they're fully booked. Alice asks if she can share a table with someone, and the waitress says, sure. They sit down, and unexpectedly, Iska walks in as the one with the reservation. Rin accuses him of ambushing them, but Iska insists he has a reservation. Alice sees his point, but she urges Rin to stay cautious. Iska sits down, and they go through the menu together. They end up ordering similar dishes, and the waitress comments on how in sync they are, but they brush it off. While they're eating, they happily talk about their pasta preferences, and it turns out they like the same stuff. Rin reminds Alice to focus on her meal, and they both apologize for the distraction. Later that night, Rin tells Alice to keep their daytime run-in with Iska to herself, since even though nothing happened, he's still an enemy soldier. Alice blames Rin for making her bond with Iska after they disagreed about pasta. Meanwhile, both Iska and Alice can't sleep. Eventually, Iska drifts off and dreams of a monster on the plane he's on. He tries to attack it, but then an ice magic holds him back. He turns around to see Alice behind him, and he wakes up from the dream right away. Iska and his crew are training out in the field. Miss, their captain, feels all dried out and complains about being dehydrated. But Jin, who's always a little harsh, tells her to tough it out with the water. Out of nowhere, someone shoves her from behind, and it turns out to be Rissia, the special counsel from the Special Defense for Humankind HQ. Rissia says she'll be in charge of Miss's unit for their next mission. Miss is worried that Rissia's plans might be too tricky to grasp since she's super smart. Rissia reassures her that everything will be cool because she's read their engagement reports, and everyone's got good instincts. They chat about their interests, and Rissia shifts the conversation to Iska's lack of sleep. Then, she hands Iska a ticket to Viblanc Sally's art exhibit. Alice swings by to see her mom in the magic room and talks about her run-in with Iska, the Imperial Army soldier who's just as strong as the Saint Disciples. She explains that the Saint Disciples protect the Emperor and are the toughest in the Empire, which means there's a stronger bond with Iska. She tells them to look up and mentions that the founder took on thousands of Imperial Army soldiers about a century ago. She adds that the founder is still alive and had a younger twin sister, Nebulus I, from whom the royal bloodline comes. The Empire had no clue she had a twin, so they celebrated when Nebulus I, also known as the Grand Witch, died. She points out that the connection with the founder is getting weaker, which they noticed when she fought with Iska in the Nelka forest. When Alice asks what that means, the queen explains that astral power gets triggered when its host is in danger. She asks Alice if anything could be causing this, and Alice remembers the astral power Iska used. The queen mentions that many mysteries surround the founder's astral power, and that she'll have the institution check it out. She tells Alice to stay off the battlefield until they confirm Isuka's identity. Alice tells Rin she's been having trouble catching Z's and needs a change of scenery. Rin suggests hitting up Neutral City again, but Alice says she's skipping the opera because she doesn't want to run into Isuka. When Alice gets to the city, she bumps into Isuka again. It turns out they're both going to the same art exhibit, and she feels bummed about it. Alice goes on a bit of a rant, but Isuka suggests they check out the museum together. She almost agrees, but then remembers their enemies and declines. Heading off on her own, she gets lost and calls out for Rin. Eventually, she makes her way to the city center, where Isuka calls out to her. He convinces her to join him at the museum, and she finally says yes. At the museum, she asks why Isuka likes a certain painter. He breaks down the art for her, explaining the concept and what he finds interesting. She says she feels the same way. After a bit, Alice offers him a drink as a thank you for showing her around, not wanting to feel like she owes him. Isuka tries to turn it down, but she insists. Alice checks his age and confirms she's older than him. A little later, Isuka dozes off with his head resting on her shoulder. Alice reminds him, a bit confused, that they're enemies and she could totally attack him like this. Miss is whimpering over the massive pile of materials Rissia sent to them. Rissia hops on a video call and starts teasing Miss about it. She tells Isuka to swing by the Imperial Senate. Isuka stands in front of the big shots in the Imperial Senate, and they give him props for holding off the Ice Calamity Witch after going through his reports. Isuka humbly admits he didn't manage to protect the reactor, but the Apostle tells him his main job was to stop the Ice Calamity Witch, which he did. Thanks to his skills, the Empire now has the firepower to take her on, and just having that knowledge is already a big win for the military, leading to a possible reinstatement for him as a Saint Disciple. The Apostle adds that they see his commitment to peace, and once he becomes a Saint Disciple, he'll be able to meet with His Excellency. But, right now, he's still pretty much a criminal in the Empire, so there's a new condition for catching the Ice Calamity Witch. Isuka's jaw drops at this new twist. Later that night, he calls up Miss to ask if he can skip training the next day since he wants to chat with someone in the Neutral City. After some back and forth, Miss agrees, but insists she'll tag along. Alice is lost in her thoughts about Isuka when Rin barges in, interrupting her. Rin hands her a dossier on Isuka, spilling the beans about him being a Saint Disciple who got demoted for saving an astral mage. Alice wonders why Isuka attacked her and orders Rin to dig into the mage he saved. Just then, her mom shows up and points out that Alice seems way too interested in the enemy soldier. She reminds Alice that the Empire is their enemy, full of hate and always hunting them, calling them witches. Her mom adds that a ton of astral mages have suffered because of their witch hunts, so taking down the Empire is what all the astral mages want most. She tells Alice to snag some items from the Empire as she leaves her room. Alice calls Rin and tells her to get ready for a trip to the Neutral City the next day. Rin defensively asks what happens if they run into Isuka, and Alice replies that's the plan, because she wants to figure out what he's really up to. Miss drives Isuka to the Neutral City. On the way, she asks who he's meeting, but Isuka says he's got no plans, just hoping to run into her on instinct. Isuka insists she parks at the city entrance so they can walk in. They reach their usual hangout, the fountain, and Isuka spots Alice standing there with Rin. Alice confirms they have a real connection. She asks Isuka who Miss is, and Isuka tells her she's the captain of her squad. Miss quietly asks who the pretty girl is, and Alice introduces herself as Alice Lise Lou Nebulous IX, the famous Ice Calamity Witch. Miss gets flustered once she realizes who Alice is, and Alice suggests they go chat outside. They head to a cliff, and Alice wonders why the two nations can't just get along when there are peaceful places like the Neutral City. She asks Isuka why he saved the astral mage a year ago, and he explains that she was just a little girl with weak astral powers, but the Empire was too obsessed with capturing them. He rescued her because he couldn't stand the thought of it. Alice tells Isuka that feeling sorry for an astral mage totally goes against his plan to attack her in the Nelka forest. Isuka goes quiet for a bit, and Rin snaps him out of it by asking if he's lost his voice. Isuka then says his reasons are still valid since his goals from a year ago haven't changed. Curious, Alice asks what his goals are. He explains that he wants to negotiate peace to end the war, but the Empire and the Nebulous sovereignty aren't listening. He figured that if he grabbed a direct descendant of Nebulous as a hostage, it would shake things up if royalty's in danger, people would freak out, and that might force them into negotiations. Alice thinks his plan is a bust because her mom wouldn't care if she got taken hostage. She insists that peace is just a fantasy, since a lot of folks hate the Empire, so there's no way they'd negotiate. Alice mentions she never met anyone in the Empire who actually wanted the war to stop and orders Isuka to work for her instead. Rin jumps in, disagreeing and saying the ladies in the palace and Her Majesty won't accept that, but Alice tells her they'll figure it out later. She promises Isuka a spot in society, but says he'll have to bail on the Empire. Suddenly, the sky rumbles, and Alice can't help but ask what's going on. Rin admits she doesn't know either because her astral powers are freaked out, while Isuka tells Miss to make a tactical retreat. Out of nowhere, the Founder appears from the cracking sky, spotting Isuka's astral swords. Miss panics when Alice identifies the Founder, and Isuka confirms that the Grand Nebulous Witch is still alive. Miss turns to Alice, calling her strategy unfair since they're outnumbered. but Alice tells her she's not fully aware of the situation. The founder recognizes them as citizens of the Empire and angrily claims they've ruined the planet before striking at them. Meanwhile, Alice's mom, the Queen, heads to a hidden room and finds out the founder's bond is broken. She sees this as a dream come true because, with her power, the Empire's downfall is near. Iska asks why the founder is targeting her own descendant, and Alice explains that the attack is just her astral power acting defensively, but she can't say why. Alice expresses her frustration, wishing they could handle this without any interference, but the dumb founder has to show up. She begs the founder to halt her attack, but instead, the founder lashes out at her for teaming up with the Empire as an astral mage, claiming she has to be erased. Rin rushes in to shield Alice and collapses after taking the hit. Alice cries out, but Iska helps her calm down, advising her to use her ice astral powers to freeze her body while urging Miss to take Rin to an astral injury specialist. Alice and Rin decide to call a truce and team up against the founder, who attacks them without mercy. They manage to block some of her hits, but Alice nearly gets blown away from others. Iska steps in to save her, and together they take her down with Alice, creating icy steps and defenses for Iska, while he makes the final move to chop off her wings, sending her back to sleep. After the fight, Iska turns down Alice's offer to work for her, saying they're back to being enemies. However, he suggests they keep their truce for the day since he's wiped out from the battle, and Alice agrees. Mismis's squad hits up the casino and gets into some card games. Iska keeps losing, and they figure the machines are rigged, so Mismis bolts to find a different one. They try to hold her back, but she won't hear it, and Nene wonders what they're even doing in a casino in the first place. Mismis fills them in that Rissia told her 2 weeks ago they'd have one last vacation before their next mission. She's in charge, and the joint training kicks off next month. Surprised, Nene wonders if the mission is so risky that they need to have this fun time now to leave with no regrets. Iska asks what the mission's about, and Mismis says Rissia wants to keep it a surprise for next week. Jin tries to chill everyone out, saying they'll die when it's their time, no matter how crazy the mission is, but Mismis points out that's not exactly reassuring. Iska asks why Mismis picked a casino for their getaway, and she says she's trying to win big bucks to buy a Merkava tank, the latest battle tank model, so they can bail if things get rough. Nene praises her for her wild ideas, and Jin gives her props for not just dragging them there for fun. Alice and Rin stroll into the casino, but Alice is all, "No way, I'm not into gambling." Rin asks if she's planning to hit up the neutral city and see that Imperial soldier again. Alice just shrugs and says she's ready to fight him if they meet again. Rin brushes her off, saying she can get him on the battlefield. She then leads Alice to a slot machine while they pass Iska and Mismis. Rin persuades her to play, saying the supreme being of victory will smile on her. Alice connects with that victory vibe and tries to pick a lucky day for her showdown with Iska, but Rin cuts in and gets her focused on the game. Suddenly, Alice hits the jackpot, and coins come pouring out of the machine fast. Rin rushes off to find a staff member while people crowd around Alice. Nene shows up and congratulates her for winning big. She bets they could score their captain's tank with that pile of coins. Alice offers her a bucket of coins, saying she doesn't need it. Nene thanks her and zips off to show her teammates who've lost all their cash. Iska says she must be really generous, while Mismis thinks she must be some oil mogul, but Nene brushes that off. She goes on about how pretty Alice is, describing her features, which makes Iska imagine Alice but think it can't be her. While on their way out, Alice stops by a fortune teller's shop. She asks about her fate with Iska and when they'll meet again. The fortune teller pulls out 2 cards and says the person she seeks is super close. She adds that their strong bond is unbreakable. Alice leaves and tells Rin that the fortune teller said some believable stuff but didn't give her a clear answer. They walk off, and Iska follows behind with his squad. He goes to the fortune teller and asks the same thing Alice did. Those same 2 cards come up, and she gives him the same reading as he got. Rissia gets called in by the High Apostles, who thank her for coming. One asks if she knows about the vortex. She says she does. The observation facility reported it, but they already have the Nameless unit working on it. The Apostle tells her they need more backup and wants to send Iska, the successor of the Black Steel Gladiator Crosswile, for the task. Rissia confirms they want her to send Mismis's unit to the vortex, knowing about her friendship, meaning she'll have to play the villain for free. The Apostle reminds her that she climbed her way to the top by pushing aside her coworkers and bosses, so this should be an easy task. She gives in to their demands, saying she'll do it just this once. Rissia video calls Mismis's team early while they're seated, and tells them to toss aside the materials they're reading because she has a new mission. She informs them they need to stop another vortex from forming, like the one caused by a drift of astral energy during the demon and witch fight 100 years ago. She adds that that vortex brought forth the Grand Witch Nebulous, and a more powerful witch could be born if the sovereignty gets involved. She wishes them good luck and signs off. Alice looks at Iska's handkerchief, saying she forgot to return it. Rin walks in and tells Alice that she got a message from her sister Sisbel about a disruption in astral energy, which could be a vortex spotted at Mudor Canyon in the southwest part of the sovereignty. She adds that the Empire has sent troops to the area. Alice wonders why she wasn't informed, and Rin mentions that the Zoa family is purposely holding back their report to the Queen. Alice wonders why the Lu, Zoa, and Hydra families are always at odds, even though they're all royal. They figure that the Zoa wants to keep the vortex for themselves, so Alice decides to check it out. They arrive at the mansion, and Alice criticizes them for their cold welcome. The masked lord of the house shows up behind them, but Rin senses him and praises her heightened awareness. Alice asks why they're not reporting the vortex, and the masked lord explains that there's no proof it's a vortex since it's just a shift in the magna. He adds that the Zoa family had just left to report their findings because they needed time to prep the documents. Alice walks away, saying it's a waste of time to talk about. Meanwhile, Iska and Mizmis are discussing their experience with the witch in their camp. Mizmis spots her old colleague, Noro, and they hug happily, and she introduces her to the team. The nameless commander, a saint disciple of the 8 apostles, lays down the rules and they get orders to start searching. Mizmis's team starts their search but finds nothing. She gets a call from Noro saying that 3 units are missing while searching. Mizmis tells them to return to base because they might have new orders, but the commander insists they keep searching for the vortex since it's not worth sending a rescue squad for just 3 out of 32 units. Jin and the others slam the commander's decision to ditch the other teams. Iska decides to go talk to him since they used to work together. Iska enters the commander's room, and the commander recognizes him as the Empire's traitor. Iska asks if he can ask a question, but the commander declines, saying he needs the proper rank to speak with him. Mizmis unexpectedly walks in and offers to speak on Iska's behalf as captain. She questions why they aren't sending a rescue squad for the missing soldiers. Iska shares their experience with the other unit members, saying the commander didn't say a thing. Nine wonders if there's some secret operation they don't know about. Rin asks Alice if she's sure about going to the valley. Alice affirms, and Rin wonders what she would do if she sees Iska. Alice defensively says he won't be there, and she's going as a princess from the Lu family. The masked lord arrives and announces that it's time. Alice checks out the valley with the vortex and realizes it's the real deal. Then the masked lord shows up, and Alice asks if he's planning to hog all the vortex's power. He tells her they just found it and are about to let the queen know about their discovery. Another lady walks in, and he praises her timing. He introduces her to Alice as Kissing, his niece, and tells them they need to bounce to protect the vortex. Alice wonders if Kissing can really defend it, and the masked lord assures her that Kissing's powers might even be greater than Rin's. She questions what he plans to do with all that power, and if he's looking to take down the Empire. The masked lord responds that taking down the Empire has been every astral mage's dream for a century. Meanwhile, Nine picks up some different astral power readings near the base, and tells Mizmis. Mizmis gets a call confirming that they're dealing with astral power forces that have snuck into the base, but their orders are still to keep looking for the vortex. Nani spots another astral power nearby, and Mizmis sees a light that Nani confirms is strong and similar to the vortex. Nani says the HQ might recognize them for being the first to discover it. Suddenly, Noro and her crew roll in. She asks if they've seen the vortex, and Mizmis confirms they have. Noro sighs, saying it's too bad because the sovereignty had set a trap at the base to catch any Imperial soldiers who found the vortex long before they arrived. She takes Mizmis hostage and flashes her witch mark along with her team members. Mizmis asks what she did with the real Noro, and Noro explains she grew up in the nebulous sovereignty, so she's the real deal. She puts some astral power pressure on Mizmis's neck, but the Nameless commander shows up and attacks her teammates. Nameless reminds Noro of his orders that nobody should get in his way, and he suspected there's a traitor among them. Noro says she can't be caught, so a fallen teammate creates a distraction while she sneaks away. They try to chase her, but she zooms off in a hurry. Iska asks the commander if he plans to stab the witch while she's holding Mizmis, but the commander dismisses him. He questions whether Iska wants to go back to prison for talking back to a commander. Jin jumps in, saying they should be out looking for them since they know where they are, but the commander insists they stick to their mission. He adds that he'll blow up the enemy's base once he gets back. At the Sovereignty's base, Alice points out that the vortex is small, so only a few astral mages would get stronger from it. The masked lord chimes in that just 1 or 2 mages will do the trick, and then the astral energy will run out. A mage reports that Noro's back at the base. They find her with an Imperial soldier, and the masked lord praises her work while Alice and Mizmis recognize each other. Alice worries that Mizmis might spill about meeting Iska in the neutral city. Mizmis tries to bring it up, but Rin pushes her aside, and she falls. Rin scolds Noro for bringing an Imperial soldier into the base and walks over to Alice. Alice thanks her, and Rin replies that Iska is always getting in their way. Alice decides she wants to check out the enemy base, so she asks Noro for the location. Alice and Rin hop on a golem to ride over to the base, and she explains that this is her 1 in a million shot to fight with Iska. Iska and the crew decide to save their captain, so they scout the enemy's base. They think their troops won't launch a missile for another 2 hours, but to their surprise, a missile hits the Sovereignty base from their own side. Iska tells everyone to move fast since the next missile will hit in 20 minutes. They rush into the base, and Iska runs in to rescue Mizmis from Noro. Noro tries to hit him with a flame made from astral power, but Iska cuts it off with his sword. Kissing shows up and takes down a missile with thorns made of astral power, leaving everyone stunned. Noro praises her for really having the Founder's blood. Kissing gets the order to take out the Imperial soldiers and aims her thorns at Iska, who decides to fight back now that he knows what she's capable of. She attacks him with her astral thorns, but he blocks them. Kissing is surprised by his unexpected defense. She unleashes even more destructive powers on him and transforms the missile to eliminate him. Meanwhile, Alice and Rin reach the Empire's base, but they find it empty. Rin senses the nameless commander's presence and saves Alice from an attack. The commander compliments her keen senses. Alice asks if she can take out her frustration on him for hurting Rin and for the person she's been hunting for. They clash, but he dodges her attacks and sends them back at her, wounding her, but Rin protects her. The commander mocks her for losing her nerve, but Alice apologizes for doubting his strength as a saint disciple. She decides to show him what she's really got, calling forth the great ice calamity, astral power on the base, but he manages to escape before getting iced. After the fight, they notice an explosion in the vortex and rush back. Back at the sovereignty base, Kissing declares that she has finished her job after the explosion. Iska emerges unhurt and teasingly questions who she eliminated. He asks who taught her to fight in such a self-destructive way, but she ignores him and unleashes a thorn dragon at him. He defends himself and strikes back, telling her she's a tough opponent, but can't always win with his abilities. Kissing collapses, unconscious, and Noro flees as Miss runs to him. He suggests they retreat with the purebred, but the masked lord shows up and stabs Iska with his sword. Iska drops to his knees and asks who the masked lord is, but the masked lord tells him to worry about his captain instead. He shoves Miss into the vortex, and Iska jumps in after her. Alice shows up with Rin and dives into the vortex to save them. She asks where Iska has been all this time and mentions that she went looking for him at the Empire base because the fortune teller said he'd be nearby. She offers to save Iska if he promises to fight alongside her afterward. Iska agrees, and she takes his hand. She uses her powers to lift them, but the astral energy suddenly spikes, causing them to pull apart. She lands back on the cliff, blaming the astral spirit for getting in their way just when she was finally about to see him. Iska and Miss land by their tank. He explains what happened to Jin and Nene. She wonders how he survived the vortex, and he gazes at a gem in his hand, quietly admitting he owes Alice one. Alice is thinking about her time with Iska in the vortex when Rin shows up and interrupts her thoughts. Alice immediately says she isn't thinking about Iska, but Rin gets her and decides they should hit up the neutral city to see him so Alice can finally have that showdown she's been waiting for. Alice thanks Rin for being so understanding. Miss feels bad for putting Iska's life in danger, but he reassures her he's okay. Then she suddenly feels a strange sensation in her hand and clutches it. Rissia walks into the boardroom and announces their secret mission. She explains they're going to sneak into the Nebulus's sovereignty to capture the queen. Iska and Jin are skeptical, wondering if it's a joke since it seems impossible. Rissia boldly claims they can totally do it because they're skilled. Jin asks her how they plan to sneak in, and Nene mentions the astral power trials. Rissia praises her for that, saying that the sovereignty uses an astral crest during their trials. If you don't have it, you're basically labeled a spy, but she has a plan ready for them that she'll share in 3 days once they finish prepping for the operation. Meanwhile, Alice and Rin are hanging out in the city square, waiting for Iska. Rin offers Alice an umbrella and reminds her that they've been waiting for 3 days without seeing him. Alice wonders why he's not showing up since they always seem to find each other, and Rin suggests their meeting was something special. Rin tries to tell her that since he got caught up in the vortex, he's probably dead. Alice cuts her off, insisting he's alive and says they should split up to track him down on the streets. Rin reflects that Alice is destined to be the next queen, but everyone else is just waiting for their moment to snatch the throne. She mentions it's time to gather supporters and think ahead, so Alice shouldn't be so hung up on a soldier like Iska. Rin promises to help Alice move on from him. Back in the boardroom, Nene wonders what Rissia is planning for the mission, and Jin replies that no one really knows because it's all on the soldiers to figure out. Nene notices Miss scratching her shoulder, and Jin jokes that she must be dealing with heat rash from too much sleep, but Miss quickly denies it. Nene offers to help treat it and urges her to take off her jacket. The room goes silent in shock when Miss reveals she has a witch mark on her body. Jin explains she probably got it while in the vortex, and that she was possessed by an astral spirit since she's a good host. Iska gives her 2 choices. She can hand herself over to the apostles to try to get a lighter sentence instead of being executed, or she can keep being their captain while keeping the astral crest a secret. Miss reminds them that if they get caught, they're in big trouble, but Jin tells her not to sweat it. She just needs to pick one. Miss breaks down, saying she doesn't want to stop being their captain, not when they just got back together. Later, Alice takes a day to rest and wonders if they need to switch up their tactics. Rin suggests giving up the search, but Alice isn't having it. She checks her guidebook, trying to figure out where else she can find Iska. Nene and Jin go to check on Iska in his room. Iska asks about the captain, and they tell him she's resting. He asks what to do about the crest, and Jin explains they need to figure out how to conceal it because a saint disciple would definitely notice it. He mentions that if Miss gets caught because of the Noro incident, she could be executed and labeled a spy, which is super bad timing. Iska spots the art exhibition card Rissia gave him and decides to take the captain to the neutral city. They sit down in the city square, and Iska apologizes for bringing her along, since it might look like they're trying to hide her. Miss replies that she feels safer and less stressed there. Iska wonders when the Empire will be as chill as the neutral city. He shares why the Empire is scared of folks with astral spirits and thinks the war will wrap up soon. He assures her there will come a time when she can stop hiding her crest, and until then, they'll be there for her. Miss tears up, telling him not to make her cry. She offers to grab them some drinks and walks off. Alice strolls into the neutral city, wondering when the sovereignty will be as peaceful as this place. Iska sits lost in thought, saying that until the war ends, the captain can't be safe. He recalls their mission to capture Queen Nebulous, and mentions that the apostles won't let her go once they catch her, which will just add fuel to the fire. Alice shows up and walks over to Iska. Not realizing he's the guy sitting in the chair, she asks if she can sit next to him. Iska recognizes her and says her name. She suddenly realizes who he is, and asks where he's been, saying she's been looking for him for days. She stumbles over her words, losing her train of thought. Iska offers her the seat, but she declines, saying Rin will chew her out. He suggests standing up for her, but she decides they should sit together as equals. Alice expresses how happy she is that he made it through the vortex. She asks what he's doing in the city, and he explains he's just thinking about something after their side situation following the incident. Alice wants to know more about the situation, saying she can keep a secret but will only tell Rin. Iska argues that she can't keep a secret, but Alice tries to sweet-talk him into spilling. Rin arrives and interrupts them. Alice tries to justify her actions, but Rin brushes it off. She offers them lemon apple juice, and right after Iska drinks it, he passes out. Alice gasps in shock, and Rin explains she spiked his drink with a sedative because she wanted him to stop chatting freely with Alice and start seeing the sovereignty as the bad guys. Alice debates Rin's choice, pointing out they're in the neutral city, but Rin clarifies she didn't think he would go for it, and they need to take him into custody. Rin picks him up, and Mizmis shows up. She sees Iska with them, and asks what they did to him in the neutral city, but Alice defends Rin, saying Iska is an enemy of the sovereignty, so they're keeping him captive. Mizmis's astral crest lights up, and she tries to attack, but Alice, shocked by the glow, stops her with her ice powers. Rissia reports to the Emperor about Iska's capture by the Ice Calamity Witch and asks what to do next. Alice tells Rin to back off from taking Iska to the sovereignty, because if they catch him, he's facing torture, life in prison, or worse for being an ex-saint disciple. She warns that if Iska escapes, they'll be in serious trouble. Rin agrees and decides to take him to the nearest nebulous territory. Rissia updates the apostles on what's happening. They say it won't stop them from going ahead with their secret mission. Rissia mentions that the Emperor told her to halt the operation. The apostles call him wishy-washy and wonder what Rissia's plan is. She explains that witnesses saw their car heading toward Alcatraz prison, which is where they send anyone who stands up to the queen. Rissia says that the former queen's enemy, the heretical demon Salinger, is still locked up there. If they break him out, it'll help the Empire win. The apostles remind her that getting Salinger on their side won't be easy, but they tell her to keep going with her plan. Rissia shows up in the boardroom where Jin, Nene, and Mizmis are hanging out. Mizmis jumps right in and asks if they can rescue Iska, to which Rissia says yes. She reminds them that they won't make it to the trials without the astral crest, so she pulls out a gadget that'll help them stamp the astral crest onto their bodies. She explains they'll be witches for a week, and the mark will just be on the surface of their skin. She uses the device on Nini first. Jin gives Mizmis a nod, then he stamps it on her left hand with the old crest. He shows it to Rissia, who confirms it looks the part. Jin stamps one on his leg too. Rissia tells them that once they reach Alcatraz prison, they need to cause chaos. She adds that some other teams will create distractions, while the rest slip into the palace to grab Queen Nebulous. Rin lets Alice know they've arrived in Alcatraz, and Alice tells her to drive to their place. She wonders what she'll do with Iska and tries to wake him up, but he's still out of it. She checks him out, but then snaps back to reality when she remembers they're supposed to be enemies. Suddenly, another car cuts in front of them, and Rin swerves a bit. Right after that, Iska comes to and sees what's going on. He tells Rin he's let down by her, but she just shifts the blame to Rin. They finally make it to the lodging, and Rin tells Iska he's now Alice's prisoner and has to come with her. When they get to Rin's room, Iska looks around, cutely wondering who lives there. Meanwhile, Jin, Nene, and Mizmis go through different checks to show their astral crest and confirm it's legit with various security measures. Risha gives them directions to the city. During their call, Jin mentions the city's full of prisons, and Rissia agrees, saying it's doing well by charging people to lock up violent criminals. They finally get to where Rissia is and ask how she managed to get in and why she's around, but she tells them not to stress about it. She pushes them to head over to the Alulagan prison tower, where Iska is being held. Rin tells Iska that they're in the Royal Hotel's go-to spot in the Sovereignty, and they'll keep him there until they figure out what to do with him. She thinks Alice's plan is dangerous and sees Iska as a bigger threat than Alice, which is why she wants to set a trap for him. Rin cuts her hand with a knife, claiming it'll back up her story about self-defense. She argues that an Imperial swordsman can't just be monitored, but has to be imprisoned since he's a major obstacle to Alice's goal of unifying the world. Rin keeps attacking, but Iska manages to dodge her moves. Meanwhile, Alice is chilling in her room, trying to decide what to have for dinner. She thinks about pasta and remembers her time with Iska at the restaurant, which makes her blush. Then she realizes Rin is going to get on her case, so she stops. As she heads to her room to figure out dinner plans, she gets a shock, seeing Rin trying to stab Iska. Iska tells Rin that her master is there, but she doesn't believe him until Alice taps her shoulder. Rin praises Alice for having fun and asks if she can join. Soon, Jin, Nene, and Mismis show up at the heavily guarded prison. Jin notes that they got that far because of Rissia before they split. Mismis wonders if Iska is really locked up, and Jin says he must be since they sent a saint disciple, or there's more going on. Alice decides to cuff herself to Iska and keep a watchful eye on him since Rin has tried to kill him twice. Rin leaves after warning Iska. Iska asks Alice how they're supposed to use the bathroom or sleep with the cuffs on. Alice gets his point and shouts for Rin. Rin takes Alice's spot, and Alice jumps in for a shower. Rin continues to threaten Iska like usual, and when Alice comes back, she forgets to wrap herself in a towel, turning away from Iska. He sees the astral crest on her back. As Alice stands there completely naked, she says her foggy mind is clear now that he's shown his true intentions. Iska and Rin are disappointed, and Iska tells her to put on some clothes. Alice shoots back, saying he should go naked too since they're rivals, playfully teasing him. Then, Rissia drops by to see the transcendent demon, Salinger, in his secured cell, and he asks her to introduce herself. Rissia asks if she needs a special invite to see him. Rissia mentions that the Emperor called Salinger a demon locked up 30 years ago, but he still looks young, making her question if he's really him. Salinger tells her she's got guts to talk to him like that and wonders if her confidence comes from the Emperor backing her up, but Rissia says that's not the case. He's surprised and asks how she managed to get in. She explains she got in peacefully because she has citizenship from the sovereignty for situations like this. Rissia says she's there to free him since they need his help to invade and capture the queen who put him away 30 years ago. Salinger finds their plan for revenge boring, but admits he's tired of hiding underground. Rissia breaks down his barriers, and he agrees to go with her and rise to something beyond just being a king. Alice approaches Iska while he gazes out the window at the city. She asks if he can't sleep because of the rough environment, but he shakes his head and says the night view is actually peaceful. Alice counters that it's not all peaceful since some of those views are prisons holding dangerous criminals. She points out the prison where the powerful demon Salingertha, ultimate prisoner and traitorous, kept. She tells him about Salinger's crime of killing the late queen but stops, worried Rin might overhear their chat. Just then, Rin enters and lets Alice know someone has infiltrated their nation and crossed the border. She glances at Iska, who brushes off her concerns, saying he's not responsible for it since he's not in the right shape. Rin agrees but mentions that suspicious groups have been seen in 12 provinces, except for the central one, and since it might be the Empire's secret force, a warning has been issued, including for the Alcatraz province. Suddenly, the prison alarm blares, and Mismis wonders if they set it off. Jin reassures her that it would have gone off earlier if they had triggered it. Nene hears footsteps and asks everyone to be quiet. They realize the soldiers must be the prison's emergency team, equipped to deal with astral mages, so they're not looking for them. Mismis worries about Rissia's safety and suggests they save her. Just then, the building shakes, and Mismis gets a call from Rissia. Rissia explains that the rumbling was from a wall that got blown up to access underground, followed by an earth astral spirit that created a massive hole up top. She admires astral arts. Mismis asks where Iska is, and Rissia admits he's not in prison. There's been a rampage caused by a demon. She warns them not to get caught by the prison guards and ends the call. Mismis screams in frustration, but Jin tells her now's not the time to complain. They gear up to escape, and Nene asks again if Rissia used them as bait, but Jin brushes it off. The emergency squad splits up, and Jin concludes they're cornered. He notes that Miss Saint Disciple, Rissia, should have communicated 2 minutes ago. Alice spots the explosion in the Alulegan prison tower and questions what's going on. Rin gets a call and updates Alice about the explosion in the hole. She mentions that the guards heard a loud roar from Salinger's cell underground, but they're trying to reach the emergency response team. Alice says the demon can't escape or he'll go after her mother's astral spirit. She tells Rin to get the vehicle ready so she can go and stop him. Rin tries to warn her about the danger, but Alice insists that no one else can handle it. Rin takes off, and Alice tells Iska about her going to prison. Iska asks if she can't fill him in on what's happening, and she says he's the enemy, but it would be nice to tell him anyway. Alice then leaves to get dressed. When she comes back, she gives him a new handkerchief to replace the one he lent her at the theater. She tells him he can toss it if he doesn't like it, but she hopes he does, and then she shyly dashes out of the room. In prison, Jin realizes they can't take them down directly, so he suggests using himself as bait while they handle the guards. Nene thinks it's a good idea since he's great at taking them out, but Jin says they won't care about her. Mismis offers to pretend to be a witch that broke out, since she has the astral crest. Mismis rushes over to the guards and starts acting. They ask if she caused the explosion, and she says yes, claiming she'll take them down with her astral powers. They shoot at her, and she bolts as they chase her until they finally catch her. They tell her she's going to be executed, but Nene and Jin show up from behind and take the guards out. Mismis hugs Nene, crying that she's so scared and would have been dead if they had shown up even just a few seconds later. Jin praises her for doing a solid job for once. Iska stands there wondering what's really going down in the prison. He hears a phone ringing and walks into Alice's bedroom, where he sees his phone going off. Iska answers a call from Jin, and they fill him in on their situation. He's surprised to hear they're in the sovereignty, and he explains what's going on with him. They ask if he can escape from there, but he says he's handcuffed, so it'll be tough. Suddenly, he remembers the handkerchief Alice gave him and opens it to find the key to his cuffs. He calls himself an idiot for not figuring it out sooner. He tells Jin and Nene to stay at the prison tower while he comes to them. On their way to the prison, Alice's vehicle gets ambushed by Imperial soldiers, and they hop out just as it blows up. They get to the prison, and Alice is shocked at how the soldiers crossed the borders. Rin says they outsmarted them and caused a bunch of chaos besides Salinger's escape. Alice decides to tackle the problems one by one. Alice contains the explosion from the car, and Rin tells the guards to show some respect. Alice lets them know she'll be leading on behalf of the Queen, so all units better follow her commands. She tells Rin to handle Salinger because she trusts her. Iska runs toward the prison, wondering what caused the fire explosion. He meets up with his crew, and Mismus hugs him with tears in her eyes, apologizing for not being strong enough. Jin tells everyone to bounce before the fire gets too close, but Iska refuses, saying he needs 15 minutes and will catch up with them behind a nearby hotel. He grabs his swords from Mismus and bolts off. Rin reaches a cliff and calls out to Salinger. He replies, noting her maid outfit, but says she doesn't look like one. Rin replies she won't introduce herself to a criminal who tried to snatch the Queen's astral spirit for a nasty scheme. Salinger insists he didn't steal anything, he just collects taxes like the king he is. They trade barbs until Rin unleashes her golem, using her earth astral powers to crush him. Surprisingly, he emerges unharmed, and when she hurls more stones at him, he sends them back. Salinger taunts her, saying she's got no chance against him because his powers are for those with noble blood, and Rin accuses him of stealing from the royal family. She charges at him, but he hits her with his powers. She tries to get back up, and he's about to land a final blow, but Iska jumps in out of nowhere. He blocks the attack with his sword, and tells Rin that he'll save her this one time, because Salinger's his enemy. Rin can't believe Iska doesn't know the transcendent demon. Iska makes her promise that if she defeats the demon, he can cross the borders with his friends. Rin is left speechless, and Iska takes her silence as a yes. Salinger wonders why an Empire person is defending her and going against him. He says he doesn't care about Iska's answers because they mean nothing to him, and he'll crush him. He taps his fingers, causing the whole building to shake, which distracts Alice while she tries to help the people. Alice sends guards and the emergency team to look for Salinger. She keeps talking, but the nameless commander shows up, claiming he can't be stopped because no one can. Alice questions how a lowly assassin like him infiltrated her territory, and Nameless calls her a ridiculous witch for labeling him as lowly. Alice asks if he attacked the prison to rescue Salinger, but Nameless brushes off her question. He tells her to pay attention because the city tower is on fire. He says Salinger will bring chaos again, just like before. Alice insists she will stop him and launches an attack with her ice magic, but Nameless darts to the top of the tower. He tells her that once Salinger breaks out of the prison, his mission will be done, and then he vanishes. Alice sees Salinger standing in front of Iska and Rin. Salinger unleashes a fire and ice astral spirit at Iska. Iska charges in to break it with his swords, but the flames only intensify. Salinger tells Iska that his mistake was disturbing the balance of fire and ice, and demands him to die. Iska vanishes in the explosion. Rin asks if that's why he collects astral spirits, and Salinger claims his goal is to merge humans with them. Rin is stunned by his words. He says only 2 people have reached that level, including the founder, Nebulous. He expresses his wish to surpass the idea of a king and reach that level. Rin calls him crazy and points her sword at him, saying he needs to be stopped. Salinger asks if she still wants to fight after seeing how Iska went down, but Rin tells him Iska is stronger than he thinks. She mentions that her master, Alice, recognized Iska as her only rival, and he even defeated the founder, whom Salinger idolizes. Salinger can't believe it and thinks she's lying, but Rin insists it would take more than that attack to take Iska out, and she was just stalling by listening to him. Salinger decides to finish her off too, but Iska suddenly appears and hits him back. Salinger is shocked, saying Iska shouldn't have survived the attack, but Iska explains that his astral swords are a pair. The black sword cuts astral arts, and the white sword replicates them. Iska chases after him, and they finally make it to the top of the building. Salinger asks if Iska froze himself to escape the flames. He wonders if Iska has lost it, but Iska tells him he's determined. He thinks to himself that Alice trusts him, so he won't let her down. Salinger calls his determination nonsense and charges a sandstorm attack, but Rin blocks it with her earth, astral magic. Salinger retaliates with another destructive blast at Rin for interrupting him, but Alice arrives and stops that with her ice power. She questions what Salinger is doing to her. Rin hugs her, praising her for holding on. She looks at Iska and says she knew he would help her. Iska rushes at Salinger to finish him off, defeating him after landing some brutal hits. Salinger backs off, saying Destiny has thrown him a serious opponent who's blocking him from leveling up as an astral mage, but he insists nothing can stop him. After the fight, Rin tells Alice that all the prisoners are accounted for, and Alice breathes a sigh of relief. She asks Rin how her injury is, but Rin lies and says she's fine. Alice touches her injury, and Rin screams in pain. Alice tells her to stop acting tough around her, and Rin admits that the pain hurts a bit, making Alice call her a good girl. Alice asks for the scoop on the situation, and Rin explains that things civilians are calm at the site while the Imperial soldiers have backed off. She adds they've briefed the Queen, but Alice says she'll give her the full rundown. The Nameless Commander shows up at the Imperial base, and another Nameless Commander says she had a tougher time than she thought. The Nameless Commander takes off her helmet, revealing it's Rissia. She shares that she thought she was going to pass out from heat stroke and vows never to wear airtight metal fiber again since she couldn't fight for more than 5 minutes before she had to take it off. Nameless reminds her she doesn't need that kind of gear, but she insists it's important for her research. She asks for an update from him, and he says 2 special forces were successful in sneaking into the province so they can keep an eye on things. Rissia thinks that's great news and bets it will keep the 8 great apostles in a good mood for 3 days. Nameless asks about reporting to the Emperor, and Rissia says she'll handle that too since the Emperor is especially curious about Iska. The apostles wish they could have captured the purebred, but either way, things are going their way. Iska and the team cross back into the Empire, and Miss feels relieved to be safe. They chat about their arrival and the astral crest Rissia gave them. Iska chills out, and Nene asks if he's tired, but he says no. He gets lost in thought and accidentally blurts out that Alice made him tired. Iska asks Mizmis if they figured out the issue with the astral crest after she tells him she's alright. Mizmis remembers and begs him not to make her relive it. She tells him to find a way to fix it when they get back home. Alice praises Rin for her impressive fight against Salinger, making Rin blush, but she admits she wouldn't have managed it alone. Alice agrees, then brings up Iska's name after thinking of him. Rin scolds her for mentioning such an unsettling name, but she finally admits that Iska saved her no matter what. Rin acknowledges he's a respectable warrior even though he's their enemy, but she still won't let Alice say his name while they're in the sovereignty, or she'll tell the Queen. Alice teases her for always being so worried. Alice's sister, Sisbel, overhears their chat through her powers and wonders who this Iska that her sister is interested in is. Then she suddenly remembers him as the saint disciple who saved her, and she prays to the star's fate to help her see him again. Rissia strolls into the Emperor's crib and hands him the scoop about Iska coming back. The Emperor mentions that the apostles are dead set on catching the purebred, but Rissia can tell them to chill if she wants, cause he doesn't give a hoot about it. He says, for the first time in a century, the Founder's bloodline, a witch princess, has got the hots for an Imperial soldier. Sisbel has a freaky nightmare where she rushes to save her mom, but it's tougher than it looks. She wakes up suddenly, shaking like a leaf. During the day, she wanders around the palace and spots her mom chatting with some guests. A nobleman tries to greet Sisbel, but she turns her back and bolts. Just then, her butler comes in, saying the Queen wants to see her. Sisbel shows up, and the Queen tells her to head to Alsamia, an independent country that hasn't declared neutrality. She says they got intel that Alsamia might be forming ties with the Empire, and she needs Sisbel to use her astral spirit to figure out if they'll side with them. The Queen asks if she wants to take her guards, but Sisbel says nah, she can handle it solo. Her butler then mentions that the first princess, Elatir, has just come back home. Iska pops back into the boardroom from the medical room and confirms he's got no physical injuries. He adds that they were wondering if he was hurt or interrogated. Nene says they've been told to come back in a week to check if the astral stamps on their bodies have cleared up. Miss is slumped on the table, looking helpless, and Jin points out she's trying to escape reality since her astral crest isn't budging, so a recheck won't be a hassle. A lady yanks Rissia into the boardroom, claiming her actions are illegal, and she's reporting her to the Imperial Senate. Mizmis asks what's up, and the lady introduces herself as Michaela from the HQ Medical Coordination Team. She explains she's reviewed their work hours and they've been grinding way too hard as special ops, so she's giving them a 60-day break. Risha looks bummed as Michaela walks out. Mizmis cheers and asks if they'll put off their astral crest checkup. Jin breaks it down for her, saying the 60-day leave is to balance things out with other units that would have been knocked out during the crazy missions they've done. He says it'll give them time to deal with the boss's astral crest. Iska adds that they'll slip up if they're careless about finding a solution, so he asks if they should bounce. Nini happily agrees and suggests they actually go on a vacation to a resort far from the Empire. Alice is buried in paper, and Rin keeps bringing her more, which makes Alice complain. Rin finally jokes that she's allowed to take a break. Alice says she's been helping with her mom's admin stuff and needs some excitement. Rin reminds her she had some action a few days back, but Alice gets lost in her thoughts until Rin snaps her out of it. Soon after, they hear the sounds of a fanfare announcing someone's return, and Alice says it must be for Elatir, her big sister. Rin mentions she's back pretty quick, so her campaign to charm the voters must be going well, and she asks if they should welcome her home. Alice agrees, and they head out of the study. Alice sees Sisbel on her way and tries to chat, but Sisbel just turns away. Rin comments that Sisbel seems like a totally different person now, since she used to be as lively and curious as Alice is. Alice gets it though. The ministers have been going on and on about the succession, and it's been really stressful. She says she'd rather just escape the palace and chill a bit. Rin reminds Alice that she can't leave right now, because Sisbel has to go to the independent nation in the east per Her Majesty's orders, preparing for the Empire's invasion, so she needs to stick around the palace to handle her duties. Sisbel tells her butler she's ready to go, and he asks if she's sure she only wants him as her bodyguard. Sisbel shows him a vision of some ministers talking about the succession and says he's the only one she can trust. She reflects that her nightmare of someone coming after her mom might actually come true. She adds that a monster is trying to take over the nation, and she's the only one who knows about it, so she has to be brave. Sisbel looks back and promises her mom she'll protect her, so her mom has to stay safe while she's away. A leader visits the Masked Lord's palace and mentions that he hasn't heard from Sisbel in a while, and that she's the only one who checks in. They exchange some small talk, and Elatir tells him someone in the nation is secretly working with the Empire. The Masked Lord asks if she has any solid proof, and she explains she doesn't think they've become pawns of the Empire yet, but she can't let it continue. She admits she's not sure what to do next, and the Masked Lord asks who the person is. Mizmis and her crew arrive in the independent nation of Alsamia. Nene and Mizmis are all excited while Iska tries to keep them calm. Mizmis hands Iska her swimming tube to blow up, and they dash to the beach. Mizmis and Nene swim in the ocean in their bikinis. Later that night, Jin gives a passed-out Mizmis a piggyback ride after she drinks a bit too much beer, which is unusual for her. Nene tells Jin to take Mizmis to the hotel while she grabs dinner at the supermarket with Iska. Jin agrees, but tells them not to get lost. Nene says she needs to use the restroom before heading to the supermarket. As Iska turns, he bumps into Sisbel, who's staring at a map. He recognizes her as the girl he saved, and they just stare at each other until Nene shows up and Sisbel slips away. She takes off running and finally reaches a crossroads. Her butler, Schwartz, catches up with her, looking worn out from searching. He pleads with her not to wander too far since he's getting old. Sisbel excitedly tells him she's found her dream knight and needs to talk to him at the hotel. Schwartz is confused and asks what's going on, and Sisbel says they'll have to wait until nighttime. Later that night, Sisbel goes after Iska to his hotel room. They find out he's just there for vacation and not staying at an Empire-affiliated hotel for special ops. At the same time, the Queen calls out to Alice in her room. She asks Alice to come with her to Sisbel's room because she wants to check in on her as a parent, not as a queen. She mentions that the retainers don't have much faith in Sisbel as a queen, so she might not win the election. She's worried about why Sisbel is always holed up in her room all day. The Queen goes into Sisbel's room and tells Rin to help Alice look for Sisbel. Alice spots a magazine on Sisbel's bed about Iska's story of rescuing a witch, and she wonders how Sisbel knows Iska. Sisbel walks into Iska's room with a duplicate access card, slips inside, and tries to chat with him, but Iska tackles her, thinking she's an attacker. He asks if the sovereignty sent her, but then he looks into her eyes and realizes it's Sisbel. She explains that she came to see him and wants to know if he'd come with her to the sovereignty. Sisbel tells Iska it's been a year since they met, and she apologizes for barging into his room. Iska asks if she's the girl from the prison, and she says yes, thanking him for remembering her. Sisbel pleads with him to move from where he is, explaining that she's not used to being treated that way, and Iska shifts immediately upon realizing his position. Alice wonders how Sisbel knows about Iska, and Rin replies that she must have been digging into him. Alice nervously asks if Sisbel saw them together in the neutral city with her astral spirit, but Rin disagrees, saying she can't see them in the neutral city because her astral spirit only works within a 300-meter range. Alice questions if Sisbel might have heard their conversations, and Rin answers that she was careful, but there's a chance Sisbel suspects Alice's connection to the Empire. Sisbel sits down and apologizes to Iska for entering his room. She admits she didn't appreciate him rescuing her from prison at the time because she thought it was a trap set by the Empire, but now she wants to show her gratitude. Sisbel takes out a bracelet and offers it to Iska as a thank you, but he turns it down, saying he didn't save her for that. Sisbel tells Iska she read about him in the newspaper after the incident because word spread to the neighboring cities. She adds that Iska lost his status because of her, and she wants to help him get it back by securing his standing and safety. Sisbel asks if he would go with her to the sovereignty. Iska suddenly remembers Alice saying the same thing earlier and questions who she really is. Sisbel covers up her identity and introduces herself as a servant of the royal palace. Iska asks why she'd choose him when she's close to the royal family and has a lot of people around her. Sisbel, frustrated, says she doesn't trust anyone. She apologizes for letting her feelings show and stands to leave. She promises to come back and expresses how glad she is to see him again. Iska notices the bracelet and wonders what to do with it. Rin and Alice return to the Queen. Rin tells the Queen they didn't find anything in Sisbel's room, but she has a plan. Rin suggests giving Alice permission to travel and meet Sisbel so she can talk with her as her sister. The Queen is on board with the idea and asks if Alice would like to go. Alice agrees and tells Rin to get ready for their trip. The 8 great apostles discuss the purebreds again. One apostle reports that their ally informed them of a purebred princess traveling to the independent nation of Alsamia with just a servant. Their ally says they will hand her over to the Empire, and the apostles are thrilled by the news. They view it as a chance to finally capture the purebred, which has been their main goal. Another apostle asks if they should activate the object, since the witch-hunting weapon can't be traced back to them. Apostle 1 agrees and orders the witch hunt to begin. Mizmis and her crew get ready to make a barbecue for breakfast. Mizmis chats non-stop, and Jin tells her to stop talking and help out. She offers to grill the meat, but Nani objects, asking her to start with the veggies instead. They both look to Iska for direction, but he stays quiet, and they realize he's zoned out. Elitier visits the Masked Lord, thanking him for seeing her. She reveals that the people trying to reach the Empire are her sisters. The Masked Lord laughs, saying he never expected that, reminding her that the information might not benefit the Liu family. Elitier insists she cares more about the sovereignty than the election. She says if her sisters are planning to destroy the sovereignty, she needs to stop them, but she might struggle to do what's right when the moment comes because of her feelings. The Masked Lord asks if she wants him to be the judge, and she confirms. He agrees to find out the truth and tells her to leave everything to him. Alice takes a bus to the independent nation. She mentions it's her first trip without Rin. Suddenly, the bus swerves and comes to a stop. Alice opens her eyes after blacking out for a few seconds. Confused about what's happening, she gets out to see what's up. Alice notices large footprints and smells machine oil. She figures out it's not a basilisk, and things don't seem good. Iska moves his team to a new hotel. Miss complains about the switch and thinks Iska's being overly cautious about changing their place. Iska claims he wants them to save on their expenses. He introspects, saying that if they stay at the hotel, something might happen again, and he doesn't want anyone else mixed up in it. Nini helps Miss fix her astral crest blocking gear. Miss recalls that they need to tackle the crest issue, but Jin tells her they've already brainstormed and come up empty, so she should just chill and enjoy their stay. He suggests they hit up the general store to grab supplies from the sovereignty. Nini asks if that's what she thinks it is, and he confirms it. Jin refers to a sticker Noro used to hide her astral crest developed in Sovereignty and says they need something similar. They arrive at their digs, and Iska urges everyone to go inside while he changes their money. Jin offers to carry his backpack and heads off, making Iska watch him suspiciously. Iska scans the area, hoping not to bump into Sisbel, but she surprises him by showing up. Iska asks what kind of magic she pulled to get there first. They move to a quieter spot, and he asks why they decided to change hotels in the morning, but she got there before them. Sisbel explains that her astral spirit lets her see past events. She replayed the moment Iska called the hotel and repeated the room number. Iska questions if she's allowed to spill such important info as an Imperial soldier, and she replies she just wants to show she's genuine. Sisbel reveals she's the Queen's daughter from the Sovereignty, and Iska's shocked when he realizes she's Alice's sister. Iska asks why the Queen's daughter would want to talk to him, and she explains a descendant of the founder is after her mom's life. They're not just after the Sovereignty, it's way scarier than that. She tells him if the Queen dies, it'll spark an all-out war against the Empire, bringing both nations down. Iska asks if they're after her too, and she confirms it, saying she learned of the plan through her astral spirit but doesn't know who's behind it, so she trusts no one. She asks Iska if he's ready to prevent doomsday for both nations, and he says yes. Sisbel asks him to be her protector so they can stop doomsday. Meanwhile, Alice arrives in the independent nation, trying to find Sisbel's hotel. She suddenly hears her name and turns to see Schwartz, Sisbel's butler. He asks if she's seen Sisbel because he's been searching for her. She left earlier for something urgent. Alice is surprised by the news of Sisbel's disappearance. Iska tells Sisbel he wants to stop the war between their nations, but he can't go with her. He explains that stopping the all-out war isn't his only goal. He wants to resolve the century-old conflict between them through peace talks. Sisbel says that's impossible because the Sovereignty will never forgive the Empire. Iska mentions it as his goal and says there's someone close to her who shares the same vision. He tries to tell her about Alice, but the Masked Lord shows up behind her with his mages. The Masked Lord accuses her of treason for talking to an Imperial soldier without hearing her out. He shows her an audio recorder he has. Sisbel realizes what he's up to and says the Zoas don't care about the truth as long as they have proof to win the election. She bolts, and he orders his mages to chase her, but Iska steps in their way and exchanges words with the Masked Lord. The Masked Lord tells him to step aside, calling it checkmate. Suddenly, the ground shakes, and Sisbel gets blocked by a massive machine. Iska figures out the machine is from the Empire. Iska questions what the Emperor's droid soldier is doing in the independent country. The Masked Lord tells his mages to grab Sisbel, not caring about their unexpected guest, and Iska tries to step in, but the Masked Lord appears and attacks him. Iska dodges the hit, and the Masked Lord tells him that Sisbel can't get away, and he won't survive alone either. Iska asks if he doesn't think Sisbel has a reason to talk to an Imperial soldier, being a princess and all. The Masked Lord disagrees, saying her reasoning doesn't matter, just talking to him is a serious crime that could cost him his throne. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out, and Jin tells the Masked Lord to keep it down at night. It's a crime to disturb the neighbors. Iska realizes Jin is the one talking, and Jin explains he was curious about what was going on but got mixed up with some goons. Miss recognizes the Masked Lord as the guy who shoved her into the vortex, and he greets her sarcastically. Nine spots the droid soldier and questions why the Emperor's experimental weapon is out. The weapon starts scanning for astral energies and locks onto Miss's. It then begins searching for the pureblood, their top target, but gets distracted by the mages. The Masked Lord tells them to back off, but the machine charges at them. Sisbel tries to bail, but the machine machine is hot on her trail. The masked lord mentions they have several uninvited guests, but it's a bonus for them. He tries to move, but Jin shoots at him to stop him. The masked lord says they're there to capture the sovereignty's criminal and wonders why Empire soldiers are protecting her. Jin says he only cares that he sent the captain into the vortex, and he's ready to take the masked lord down. The masked lord orders his mages to attack, and they unleash their astral fire and ice powers. Isuka rushes over to the machine to save Sisbel and cut off the assault. Nene tells Isuka to stall so she can disable it before it sends out the data it collected. Isuka fights hard against the machine. Sisbel asks why he's helping when he said he couldn't be her ally. Isuka explains he has his reasons, which he hasn't shared, but he won't hand her over to the machine or the masked lord. Isuka calls out to Nene, and she says she's ready. She uses the piercing shot command to attack, and the machine explodes. Mismus and Jin stop running, and Mismus wonders if Nene caused the blast. Jin confirms, saying they need to hurry and join the others. The masked lord shows up behind him, saying he'll be the one going. Jin and the masked lord start fighting, and the masked lord stabs Jin's hand, making his rifle drop. Jin shoots the masked lord with his left hand, but luckily for the masked lord, the evidence for Sisbel's arrest gets destroyed instead. The masked lord pours a barrel of gasoline on the ground and tells them he's going to do what their founder did a century ago, turn the empire into a sea of flames. He commands his mages to set the gasoline on fire, but Mismus's astral wind stops them. The masked lord realizes she got her powers from the vortex, and he finds her an interesting research subject. He tries to close in on her, but Jin angrily shoots his mask off, furious at his disgusting comments about their captain. The masked lord decides to back off, saying it's not worth it anymore, and he vanishes. Nini picks up something weird with the machine. It shuts down its main energy source and switches to a backup that makes it emit a blinding light. Isuka comments that the object is unlike anything he's seen before, and Nene mentions that the light is way too intense. She says it's not powered by electricity or fuel, and Sisbel explains it's from astral energy's light. Isuka tells Nene to take cover, and the machine releases a huge burst of astral energy that causes a wild explosion. Mismus and Jin feel the blast and realize it's coming from Isuka's spot. The machine reloads its energy and gets ready to strike again. Nene uses her piercing shot command, but the machine absorbs it. Isuka tells Nene to regroup with Jin and evacuate the nearby people, warning that the next fire could be catastrophic if it keeps spreading. Nene takes off, and Isuka charges at the machine, while Sisbel protects him by playing a past video of a sandstorm to block the machine's attacks. Following Sisbel's lead, Isuka strikes the machine, and it powers down. Suddenly, the machine ejects its core, and a catalyst beast appears, surprising Isuka. The beast absorbs Sisbel, and Isuka is baffled, attacking the beast to no avail. He vows it's not over yet. Out of nowhere, Alice shows up and goes after the beast, commanding it to let go of her sister. They both rush at it, but the beast cuts off their powers. Alice figures out it's an astral spirit, and Isuka questions what the Emperor plans to do with this weapon. The beast speaks in a foreign tongue, and Alice explains that it's the language of the astral spirit. She tells Isuka they still have a battle to fight together, and asks him to join forces so they can stop the chaos the beast intends to unleash. Isuka agrees, and they combine their powers to block the attacks and defeat the beast successfully. The beast vanishes and drops Sisbel in an orb. The Great Apostles report that they've lost track of the object, and they need to keep a close eye on Isuka, the Black Steel successor. They decide to move on to the next phase. Alice and Isuka stand over Sisbel and express their thanks at the same time. Alice, confused, says she doesn't want to fight against Isuka but rather with him. Sisbel wakes up and calls for her, asking if Alice knows Isuka because she's been curious. She questions their relationship, and Alice denies knowing him. Isuka follows suit, claiming he doesn't know her either. Sisbel confirms they're not acquaintances and grabs Isuka's arms, declaring him the great knight suited for her as Queen Nebulous. Alice stammers, questioning what Isuka plans to do, but he hears his teammates calling him. He dashes off to meet them, leaving the sisters behind. He smiles proudly at his team when he sees them. Risha reports that the object unleashed by the Great Apostles has been defeated and praises Isuka for a job well done. Nameless asks about the Emperor, and she replies he's stepped out for a bit, probably enjoying himself. She adds that it won't be long before they find out about Salinger. Salinger stands by a tree, looking at his crest, saying he's bored with this world, but Isuka interests him. He spots a figure behind the tree and asks who it is. Salinger realizes it's the Emperor and calls out to him joyfully. The Emperor tells Salinger he has something fun in store. The masked lord arrives at his mansion, greeted by kissing. He informs her they need to get ready for the election because it's the right time. The queen summons Elatir to her presence and asks if she leaked the intel about Sisbel's location. She also questions if she's the real Elatir, and Elatir smirks back at the queen. Rin stands outside the palace, calling out to Alice.